Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles.
Chase Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome into another edition of Operation Domination. Don't just be great. Dominate. That's right, baby. That's what we're trying to do here. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, joined here with Chase Thornton. No Adam LaRue in the building today because unlike Chase, Adam is a slacker. No. I'm just kidding. We love Adam. He's on a work trip. You know, that day job has to come into play, unfortunately, sometimes. But don't worry. Me and Chase, we got this locked down. We have a lot of information to go over, a lot of things to help you guys get ready, a lot of questions that came in. We appreciate that. Make sure you go to @DanMaterFF and drop those questions really throughout the week. Like, I'm available to you guys 24/7. I don't know. You know, take advantage of it. All right. I don't charge you for Twitter advice, okay? But if you want even more than just my advice, all you have to go is go to FSAN.com. We got the whole forum there. Become a pro member. It's $50 for the year. You get into our jersey leagues. You get all the advice from all of our experts. You get all of our content. You get all of our rankings. You get everything. So make sure you go ahead and do that. You can also download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app, and you can check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. We're getting ready for week 4, Chase. This is where we're at. We're about to be a month into the season. And this is what everyone's waiting for, right? Guys like me, especially, who crunch data numbers all day. I need 4 weeks of data to really make the model do what it's supposed to do. We're almost at that point. But even in week 3, I think there's some trends that I feel comfortable that we're going to be seeing throughout the entire season. And I think there's some things that still need to be worked out, ironed out. And remember, this is just the first quarter. There's 4 quarters, not just in the football game, but 4 quarters in a fantasy football season because it's 17 weeks. I call it 4 quarters and 1 week of overtime. That's essentially how this thing works. So if you're 1-3 by the time week 4 is done, even if you're 0-4, you are not out of it. There are still plenty of opportunities to get better, and we will try to help you along the way. Chase, how you doing today, man?
Doing all right. Got some new broadcast equipment down here in the Mott and Bailey basement bar. So hopefully we don't cut out like we did last week. I'll be here with you guys the whole time. So
I know I was so thirsty. I didn't know what to make myself. You just left me in the dark.
Listen, I made it anyway and drank it anyway, and then I had another one because I was thrilled with how of course, it went out right as I was starting to talk about, my portion of the program there, but never fear. We're back this week. We're going to talk about exactly what we need to here to get you guys ready for your DFS slate for this weekend and the rest of it there to get you guys charged up and hopefully win some money this weekend.
Well, if one thing to plug you, Chase, real fast is that if you ever want more DFS content, if you want that recipe, Chase is always going to put in his article, which comes out when?
Fridays. That'll be out on Fridays every week. The first 3 weeks are already up over there in terms of that. So you can go back and you can find our cocktail recipe from each of the first 3 weeks there. And then, like I said, it'll be out Friday. So I'll go a little bit more in depth into the guys that we talk about today. And I'll also give you a couple of other suggestions for ways you can fill in around them too. So yeah, check out the article on Fridays every week.
All right. So with that, let's dive into it. Just another reason to go to FSAN.com. But we have start sit questions of the week. So I pulled out the ones that always have the most, popular players or not just popular players, but the most popular questions surrounding common players is probably the more apt description for that. This first one has a lot of players that a lot of people are asking about. So I put it in here, but it's a good one. It's a doozy. It's an interesting question. With CeeDee Lamb out, should I start George Pickens or stick with Emeka Egbuka? And I think every single week, I feel like Emeka Egbuka has been part of our common start sit questions in some shape, way, or form. It's been very, very strange from that standpoint. But Chase, what do you got here? Which direction would you lean? No CeeDee Lamb in there. George Pickens becomes the number one. Emeka Egbuka, of course, has been doing his thing. Which way do you lean on this?
Man, this is a great question for this week, especially since there are questions on both sides of the equation here that really make it even more difficult than it would be in a normal week. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb's out. So George Pickens, he should vault to the top of that pecking order there in that pass game in Dallas. He should see a ton of volume, but he's facing a Packers defense that is giving up the fourth fewest points to opposing wide receivers. He's not really going to have any target competition. I don't think. You could maybe argue that when Lamb's on the field, that Pickens and Ferguson and Lamb might be canceling each other out in certain routes, but Ferg is always going to get his. I think he's been one of the top targeted tight ends in the league this year. So I think that the Pickens should just step up into that number one role there. But again, that Packers defense has just been so tough and has limited people time and time again all week. Even last week when they had the disappointing loss to the Cleveland Browns. I mean, they lost, but it wasn't necessarily because they were giving up a ton through the air. But then on the other side of things, you look at Emeka Egbuka, and he's got, he should see a ton of volume too, because Mike Evans is going to be out. Now, we might be getting Chris Godwin back, which would be nice. But even if he comes back, I think he's going to likely be at least somewhat limited in his role. And they are playing Philly, who's a middle of the road team against wide receivers. So, I mean, for this week, that Packer defense scares me. I don't think I'm being a homer when I say that. So it's Egbuka by the slimmest of margins. I think I literally have them differentiated by one place here in my rankings.
Well, I have them by a much greater margin than one. I got Egbuka at my wide receiver 9 and George Pickens at my wide receiver 15, which really leads to this analysis. Find a way to start both of them. I mean, if you're really that loaded where you can't, okay, then I get the question here, which one you have to pick. But I have both of them in my top 15. So that's me telling you that I would want to play both of these guys straight up if I could. Obviously, with Egbuka being my wide receiver 9 on the week, he would be the guy I would lean to if you have to choose between one. I mean, you mentioned Chris Godwin coming back. The guy barely practiced throughout training camp. He's just been getting back to practice the last few weeks, coming off that big injury, coming off a big layoff. It's hard for me to believe that he plays a full snap count.
Yes.
Now maybe he plays more than he would have be out of necessity in his first game back. That's quite possible. The other thing I'm going to be looking for in this game is how they utilize Egbuka with Chris Godwin, being that they're both very similar type wide receivers. Who gets to play the slot more? Who is going to get featured more in the Z? Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, I mean, your only other Sterling Shepard is there. And where does Sterling Shepard thrive? In the slot. So I would think that one of these guys is going to have to play the X. The other one will be playing the Z, and then they'll rotate people through the slot in terms of which one of the three is going. They're probably going to have to use them all over the place. It's a conundrum this week, and that Godwin coming back, I agree with you. I don't think it takes a ton of volume away from what Egbuka is going to see, but it does put that doubt in the minds of Egbuka owners probably, where it creates this question here.
And that's probably the case. But look, Egbuka has been the wide receiver 10. He's been the number one wide receiver, even with Mike Evans healthy on the field. I don't see how he's not with Chris Godwin just coming back from a long injury. I don't see how that really changes here. And I'm feeling, even no matter what they do with Chris Godwin, I bring that up. It's just like, that's going to be an interesting quandary that's going to be in my mind on Sunday with Mike Evans out for 2 to 4 weeks. We'll talk about that more with Dr. Brian Scott tomorrow. His target share is going to be fine ultimately. I think the more interesting question happens, okay, when Evans comes back, now what does that start to look like in that situation where even if Egbuka stays the wide receiver 1 in that scenario, how much of his opportunities are siphoned away from the other two being on the field? The good news is this is a team that plays a lot of 11 personnel. So all three will be on the field, and Baker will play point guard. He will divvy it out, distribute it. So your floor is not going to be there. His floor is never going to crash through. Pretty much, no matter how you break this down. But Egbuka for this, I want to throw this in here. I didn't put this question in our list because I thought the fantasy football analysis behind it would be a little bit too cupcakey. But somebody actually asked, with CeeDee Lamb out, should I bench George Pickens. Coming up with the idea of like, well, when Pickens was the wide receiver 1 for the Steelers last year, really wasn't very good. He was really just a wide receiver 3. I think that's where the line of thinking behind that question at least was going. Dak Prescott's a much better quarterback. This is a team that still needs to be pass first. I'm going to talk about a little more about that later on in the show today. You're starting, again, wide receiver 15. You're starting George Pickens. But I just think it's interesting. You go from one question of Pickens or Egbuka, or do I even bench Pickens because he can't get open if he's going to get number 1 corner attention, according to that?
It's overthinking it. Yep.
No, 100%. All right, so let's get to our next question that was pretty common here. What to do with Chase Brown? Everyone is trying to figure out, what do I do? How panicked should I be? Should I be trying to get out for whatever I can now, or do I hold on and ride this wave? Chase, I'd be interested to see your conversation pieces here.
Yeah, another great question out there. If you look at Chase Brown, and I know that we all drafted him high enough that we were counting on him to be at least a low end, a high end number 2 or a low end starter. That's what we were expecting at the worst, right? And then the Bengals offense has just absolutely imploded this season so far. But if you look at Chase Brown's numbers in terms of percentages and in terms of carries, the usage is still there for him. He's still playing over 67% of snaps. He still gets 84% of the opportunity share in that backfield. He really doesn't have any realistic competition there between P. Ryan and I don't want to hear about Taj Brooks.
P. Ryan just broke his thumb or something on Sunday.
Yeah. Too. So, there's a question if he'll even be available. And to make matters worse, the Cincinnati Bengals have had problems on that offensive line seemingly since time immemorial here. They've got the second worst offensive line as graded by PFF there. They've got rookies at both guard spots inside. It's no wonder that they can't run block or pass block. They can't do anything right now. They're not a good offensive line, which hurts Chase Brown. But because of that usage, I'm going to say if you can't unload him before he plays this monster defense in Denver, if you can't unload him before Monday, I would hold on to him a few weeks and see if you can get a better better outcome from a game, and maybe you can, fish somebody in off of that one there. That's my take on it. I gotta hold him for now unless I can unload him for a song before Monday.
So this is where I was coming on this question. I'm telling people out there, don't panic on Ashton Jeanty. And if I'm telling them not to panic on Ashton Jeanty, then the same should apply for Chase Brown. Yes. Ultimately speaking. First of all, he's one spot ahead of Ashton Jeanty. So if everybody's panicking on that, Chase Brown, you're both of you guys are all in the same boat if you have those two players. If I'm not going to panic on one, I'm not going to panic on the other. Will he potentially be more matchup dependent than he would have been with Joe Burrow? Yes. Without Joe Burrow, you don't respect the vertical passing game nearly as much. To your point, the offensive line is horrendous doing anything right now, which makes it rough. So it is going to come down to matchups in order to get the production that you were hoping to get out of Chase Brown. You mentioned Denver's defense being a monster. It ain't for running backs for the first 3 weeks. Like, they're 10th in most points allowed to the running backs. This is actually a plus matchup. Now, it's funny. I'm going to talk about Chase Brown a little bit later in the show, so I'm not going to go too in depth to it. But here's what I am going to say with this. He does have the 12th easiest ranked schedule right now for running backs moving forward from week 4 on. Against the Denver Broncos this week, okay. But the other thing I want you to focus on is the fantasy football playoffs, where maybe there's an outside chance Joe Burrow comes back if somehow Cincinnati stays competitive. But weeks 13 through 17, they play the Ravens twice. Guess what? The Ravens have allowed the most points to fantasy running backs so far this season. Their defense might not be nearly as good as we thought it was going to be. They play the Bills, who are about middle of the pack. They have the Dolphins, give up the 5th most. They have the Cardinals, give up the 9th most. That's weeks 13 through 17. The most pivotal point in your season, Chase Brown, at the bare minimum, is going to have an RB2 floor based on those matchups. So it's somebody I'd rather hold or maybe even buy low in on. And I'll talk about more about that later, but I just wanted to hit that question now, because it's funny. I'm going to take a little bit of a different turn later in the show. You'll see. All right. Let's get to number 3 here. So they want to sit one. And this is a hell of a group to sit. And I think a lot of people might be facing a very similar type of dilemma. Sit one running back out of Javonte Williams, Chuba Hubbard, or Trey Benson, now with the James Conner injury. So this is going to be a common theme, I think, amongst most people. Where do you fall on this, Chase?
Yeah. Wow. Honestly, if it was any other week, I might sit Benson just because it'll be his first start there. I think he's going to get a bunch of usage, but I think we have to give him some grace here at the outset of his career as a starter. Now, Seattle is pretty mid against running backs. They're right in the middle of the pack. They're not great against running backs there. And he may cede the passing work down a bit to Amari DiMercato. He may, at least to start. So I think we got to give him some grace. Don't expect gigantic numbers out of Trey Benson, but I think you're starting this week. New England likewise has a very middle of the road defense, like literally middle of the road. They're ranked like 15th across the board on a lot of things. Playing against Chuba Hubbard there. Chuba's offensive line paid better last week. They're not as good as they were hoping they would be, but they played better last week. The nice thing about Chuba is I don't think he's going to game flow out of anything because he stays in on the pass. He stays in on runs. They don't necessarily remove him, situationally. So I'm starting Chuba Hubbard, which means I got to sit Javonte Williams, who actually has been probably the best fantasy back of these three. But again, he's facing that stupid Packers defense, gives up the 26th most points to running backs. And now you're talking about Dallas having backups at center. They just lost their number one draft pick, Tyler Booker, at guard for the week. So they're going to be two interior linemen who are out. They were already ranked in the bottom half of the league on offensive line. They were not playing great. Their left tackle has not played up to what they were hoping for him. So you combine that Packers defense with a suspect offensive line and a game where they might have to be passing early. I'm sitting Williams, and it's hard for me to say that, but I'm sitting him.
Yeah, so I'm with you. So Javonte Williams is my RB27 on the week, Chuba Hubbard, my RB15, and Trey Benson, my RB24. So both Hubbard and Benson are RB2s for me this week, while Javonte's more of a flex. You laid it out perfectly. The entire interior of that offensive line is banged up with BB out, Booker out. Like those are big deals for a guy who pounds it up the middle, who needs that running start to really get going, who relies on that power game in Javonte Williams' game there. That's a big deal. And then the Packers are fantastic against the run. They've allowed the 7th least amount of fantasy points to the running back position and 3rd in rushing yards allowed per play. You can't run on them. Quinshon Judkins did have a decent game this past Sunday, but that was against light stacked boxes because the Browns were trying to throw for the most part. Even though it was a neutral game script, they were still trying to throw the ball. So I'm not expecting the Cowboys to have a ton of success on the ground. I also expect, because of the way Dallas' defense has been playing, that they are going to be coming back from behind probably pretty early in this game. And I have to think that the Packers, after a letdown against the Browns, will see their A game against Dallas on Sunday night. So I do think a lot of things kind of come into play there. With the whole Benson of it all, I'm super confident with Benson. He was a complete bell cow after James Conner went out. And remember, it was early 3rd quarter, so we got nearly a half of football to kind of see how this would work. And Benson outsnapped DeMercado 21-7. All right. Now, DeMercado is going to get some of the passing game work. And I don't think that's out of Trey Benson not being able to do it, because Trey Benson has been the receiving back with James Conner the first couple of weeks. That's more out of, all right, where do we spell him? Because you have to figure out how to spell him.
Yeah, he's got to take a play off once in a while. He can't do the whole thing.
Yeah, and because he's so much better, I think, than the rest of the depth chart, you might forget to do that every so often when you're supposed to. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at a little bit. So I expect Benson to be a pretty good bell cow in this matchup, and he's got to be an RB, a running back too, at the very least. Like, I don't see the difference right now between him and James Conner. James Conner, even before the injury, did not have the explosion, especially from the handoff, like the quick twitch explosion. He didn't have what he had last season, at least not so far through this year. Maybe it's because his Achilles are getting ready to snap and we just didn't know yet. I don't know. But Trey Benson has looked explosive. He's looked like he has progressed since he's been drafted and has gotten that momentum that we've been looking for since he got drafted in his quick twitchness. So I like Trey Benson a lot here. heading into this week. And Chuba Hubbard, I know it's been quiet, like, because the Bryce Young storylines of how good or how terrible he's been, on this drive or that drive, and overall how bad he's been. That's been the storyline. That and Ted McMillan looking as good as he has. That's what people have paid attention to. But Hubbard's just been moseying along, finishing average points as a top 12 running back. Another good matchup here against the Patriots, who are 14th in points allowed. It's not a matchup that scares you in any capacity. So Chuba Hubbard's just one of those guys. I'm going to keep playing as an RB2. I'm going to keep getting that solid production. I'm not benching you ever. So we've been talking start sit for this entire season. And we're finally at the time of the year where I'm willing to entertain trade questions. Okay. So here's a trade advice question. Puka Nacua for Devon Achane. Who wins? What do you think about this, Chase?
I don't understand why anybody who has Puka would try to make this trade, even if you need a running back here. Don't trade Puka away. I mean, on the surface, it doesn't look too bad, right? I mean, you've got a wide receiver one, just happens to be the overall wide receiver one right now. You're trading for a running back one, who is actually running back 7 overall right now. And that's not terrible in a vacuum, but that's a 3-point swing in terms of what Puka is scoring you on average every week versus what you're getting out of Achane. Plus, you've got the idea that now you're having to rely on Achane in that Dolphins offense, which has been, who the hell knows what's going to happen with that. If you're the guy trading for Achane, I assume that you're already stacked at wide receiver if you would even consider trading Puka away. But you're taking out, like I said, 19.7 points. You're only plugging in 16.6 at running back. That's going to have to be at least 3.2 points per game more than whoever you had playing in your flex position, which might be the case, but probably isn't, because you already had bad running backs and good wide receivers. It's Puka. Don't make that trade, Puka owner.
Yeah, I wouldn't. First of all, Puka Nacua is the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football. And as long as Matthew Stafford stays healthy, which so far he has, and hasn't been hit much either, by the way. The offensive line is not great, but they've been doing a good job making sure he gets the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. I don't think that's going to change, to your point. So right now, Puka Nacua, 36.5% target share. That's second in the league. 45% targets per route run. That's first. And 19.7 half-point PPR points. That is first. It's an offense that throws first, and right now is targeting all of its, funneling all of its targets to 2 wide receivers. Like, this is what you pray for when you have elite weapons and usage. Like, I don't get it. And Achane, look, to his credit, he is performing well, especially relatively speaking with that offense. But it's like you said, it's an unstable offense. It's an unstable offense environment. We don't know if Mike McDaniel going to even be a head coach in a couple of weeks and what that could mean. So there's a lot of things there to consider. To your point, you'd have to be super stacked at wide receiver, super desperate at running back. Maybe you are, but ultimately Puka wins the trade there. All right, we have our first showdown of the show. And it comes on defense. Now, Chase, real quick before we get into this, because I could not remember for the life of me, what was the showdown between you and Adam?
That's a good question, because I'm getting old. Wasn't it Travion Henderson
versus somebody?
I think it had something to do with Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson.
Oh, yes.
I know I won finally, but
finally, yes. Yeah, you finally won. I'm still the only one who's undefeated. It's great podcasting right now, by the way. But yeah, so we had that showdown between you two last week. Now you and I get to have a showdown on equally exciting exciting question. Woo. Defense, baby. We love defense on this show. We always find a way to talk about it. So we're getting asked here, would you start the Packers defense or the Chargers defense this week? Chase, your answer.
Okay, well, this is going to sound awkward to some people because I've spent the whole show talking up the Green Bay defense, but honestly, I'm leaning Chargers this week. You're talking about a team that's facing a rookie quarterback making his starting debut on a team that's in absolute turmoil in terms of what's going to happen with their head coach, their front office. They just lost their ostensibly their starting running back with Tyrone Tracy, although Scadabo's probably performed better. But he is a new starter at running back. So you're talking about 2 rookies there in that backfield now. The Giants O-line, speaking of terrible offensive lines, Cincinnati, here's another one that has performed absolutely horrendously. Okay. And the Chargers, I know they lost Khalil Mack last week, but this is a team that, even though their defense might be susceptible to big plays, if you look at the first 3 games they've played, the scores they've given up, the touchdowns they've given up, for the most part have been because of big plays. They're susceptible to that a little bit, but I don't know if the Giants have a ton of big plays in them. Malik Neighbors didn't practice today. He's hurt. So
he's going to be okay though.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay, but he's still, there's the question is there, and it's a rookie quarterback making his starting debut. I'm willing to roll with the Chargers this week.
And look, everything you just laid out as far as the Giants offense and what the floor for that team could absolutely be with the Chargers defense has been good. Not great, but good so far to this point in the season. 100% agree with. The one thing I would push back on is that I do think, and it was only week 3, but I do think that team, despite his week 2 performance, was already turning on Russell Wilson. So I don't know if this thing could get much worse as far as the abysmalness of the offense. And there's something interesting with while I'm not a Jackson Dart fan, he does fit, his skill set fits more what Brian Daboll is used to doing, using the mobility on RPO action and attacking the 5 to 15 yard portion of the field. Not so many deep bombs off in the perimeter and checking the ball down when it's there. That's how Brian Daboll has traditionally built his offenses. That's more in line with what Jackson Dart naturally is going to look to do anyway. So in some ways, I think this could be a better fit. And I do think with Daboll, like you said, Daboll's job being on the line and what they have to do here, they don't have to win games. They just have to make Dart look competent, make the offense look like it's moving in the right direction.
Make it look like there's a future there. Yeah.
Daboll's going to do everything he can in his power to keep Dart on track and not have him in a position to have to take too many chances. Now, maybe he just takes those chances on his own, completely and 100% possible. But they're going to err on the side of caution in this game and kind of take away some of those fantasy point opportunities that may otherwise be there with the Chargers. On the Packers side of this thing, without CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott is a turnover friggin' machine. We laid out the woes of the offensive line from an injury perspective on that team. It's George Pickens, he's a fine wide receiver too. He's not a wide receiver 1. I think we've seen that at this point. He's better as a complement. I think this could get really ugly for Dallas on both sides of the ball coming onto this game. So I just think the upside for the turnovers and the sacks, and we know Meek is going to get at least 1. Right. Like I think those fantasy point opportunities are more so going to be there. Packers are still my number 1 defense heading into this week. Chargers are in my top 6 though, by the way. So, but we'll see who plays better. We'll put that in the showdown for next week.
Hey, that's a challenge I won't mind losing because that means that my Packers did well. So I mean, I'll take the L there, or I'll take the W if it comes to me. But yeah, good showdown.
All right, yeah, it's always a lot of fun. So let's talk about rankings. Everyone wants to talk about rankings. Who are the players that we are our biggest differences with against the ECR right now? So we'll go this 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Chase, give me your 1.
My player that I have the biggest gap on in terms of ECR is Tyquan Thornton right now. Honestly, I have him as wide receiver 34, which is only a low end wide receiver 3, but I'm 21 points higher than the ECR on him there. And when I look at it, I just think, I know that there's the possibility they've talked about, again, speaking of injured guys coming back, Xavier Worthy might play and all that. Well, even if he plays again, I think he might be a little bit limited. Tyquan Thornton has performed very, very well in that offense, better than I think anybody ever thought that he was going to in the NFL after what we saw to him his first couple of years. He's been very good there. And he's sitting right around wide receiver 20, 21, somewhere in there in half point PPR.
Yeah, he's in the top 20.
So he's been a wide receiver 2. I'm ranking him as a wide receiver 3. The rest of the industry is like, oh, forget him. I just don't see where he ranks as the 50th best in that offense, even if Worthy comes back, because I think that there's nothing really all that exciting about what Hollywood Brown has done. Travis Kelce hasn't looked like necessarily Travis Kelce all the time. I still think he's got it in him to at least hit wide receiver 3. So Tyquan Thornton, that's my guy that's farthest off of ECR for me.
Yeah, so I don't have him quite as high as you do, but I do have him at wide receiver 46. He's been the big play guy. We keep talking about how the Chiefs need to find a way to get more big plays. That's been him. He has a 53.6% air yard share for this team right now. He doesn't lead in targets. That's Marquise Brown at the moment. Xavier Worthy practiced in full today. We fully expect him to be back. I'll talk to Dr. Brian Scott tomorrow about what our reasonable expectation for his performance could potentially be coming off of that injury at this point. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty good, though. But I think Thornton still stays the big play guy because since Hollywood Brown, since that week 1 performance, he hasn't been able to really do anything. And I think Xavier Worthy might just step in like he did last year when he spelled Rashee Rice when he got knocked out and kind of fill that role. And if you have that with Thornton going on, some of those deep shots become a little bit more open. I'm kind of with you. I like him in DFS. I like him to take a shot on if you need a boost play. I don't know that you necessarily do unless you're super injured because it's not bye weeks yet, but I think he's in that realm. I do have him as a low-end wide receiver 4 with some upside. So I'm kind of with you there. I am higher than ECR on him too. My number 1 guy is Ashton Jeanty. You're going to see a theme with my next 2 guys, but it's Ashton Jeanty. So he's my running back 27 heading into this week. ECR's got him at running back 15. I get it. Like the usage is there. That's the important part.
Yes.
The usage is there in total. Here's what scares me about Jeanty. And this is not just going to be an answer for Jeanty week 4. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about Jeanty moving forward as well here and what I'm looking at. So right now he's the running back 34. His expected fantasy points per game in half point PPR, which is what we base this show mostly off of, is 12.3. That would be running back 22. Okay. So a low end RB2. Not great. Right now he's averaging 7.7. So you could look at that and say, okay, well, he should be getting nearly 5 points more a game than what he's getting right now. And that's the reason why you could potentially look forward to seeing some positive regression. And what's killed him really is the passing game. He has the ability to catch the ball. They're not giving it to him. He has 6 targets this season. 6. Because Zamir White and Dylan Labe, who I thought was dead to rights after not playing anything last year, they have taken the majority of snaps in 2-minute drill. They have taken the majority of snaps of long down and distances. They're the ones who have all the targets. So it's killing Jeanty because all he really is right now is an early down runner, and he has gotten all the carries inside the 5 thus far, so at least he has that going for him. So basically this boils down to he's got to get more involved in the receiving game. I don't know if that happens. Now, he does have a good matchup against Chicago this week. They've allowed the 6th most fantasy points to the running backs so far. The Chicago defense is not the Chicago defense of old. It's not a very good defense, whether it's in the D-line or in the secondary whatsoever. So I kind of say that to say this. He might be a sell high if he outperforms my ranking because I just haven't liked what I've seen out of the Raiders offensive line. I haven't liked the total usage of Jeanty not being used in the receiving game. So that's why I still have him as a running back 3. But if he outperforms my ranking closer to ECR, this might be an opportunity to sell high because here's the other problem Jeanty's facing after this week. He has a 7th hardest ranked schedule the rest of the way, according to PFF. So you're mixing a bad offensive line, questionable usage. He still has the name. The second he pops off, I might try to see if I could sell Ashton. It's kind of rough. And right now I can't trust him enough, even against the Bears.
Right.
And a shootout game that might just turn into passes down the field anyway, in which case he's not playing nearly as much in those situations as an RB2, as a mid-level RB2. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Like their line has just been, I mean, we keep bringing it up, these terrible offensive lines, but the dude has more yards after contact than he does regular rushing yards. He is continually getting hit in the backfield. He is averaging getting hit in the backfield before he even gets a chance to get the ball and run with it. If that doesn't improve, I don't see his rushing performance improving. And like you say, right now, unfortunately, we were all hoping for like a Bijan Robinson redux, right? We were hoping to find a guy that was going to be used in every phase of the game because we know he can be. He has that ability. And yet, if that offensive line doesn't play better, you're talking about an early down back on a team that can't run the ball and is going to be in a lot of second and longs and probably has to throw anyway. Yeah. So, you're hoping against hope, maybe, that he has a pop game here against the bad run defense in Chicago. And then, sell him off. It sucks. I know he was probably your first round pick and you're probably selling him for not quite pennies on the dollar. But yeah, I mean, it's just such a tough situation there because that offensive line has been so bad in every phase.
100% agree. And the fact he's making missed tackles makes you think that maybe this thing gets turned around, but it definitely won't get turned around in the way that you're hoping for when you drafted him in the first place. I feel pretty confident in saying that, at least at this point. Who's your number 2 discrepancy?
My number 2 discrepancy here is J.K. Dobbins, running back for the Denver Broncos. I have him at running back 11. I have him as a low-end RB1 this week. I'm 11 spots over ECR there. They've got him at 22. When I look at this game, I look at the idea that, I mean, you talk about Denver, they're going to be at home playing against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense sucks. Since I'm going to talk about Dobbins a little bit more later, but Cincinnati's defense is terrible. This is a game I expect Denver to win. They're leading, if they're leading at home, they're going to want to pound the rock. Who are they going to want to pound the rock with? They're going to want to pound the rock with Dobbins. They're not pounding it with RJ Harvey, even if they want to give RJ Harvey some work. Denver over a touchdown favorite at home. I'll take their running back to perform very, very well this week. So J.K. Dobbins, that's my number 2.
Where do you have him ranked at again?
I have him ranked 11th.
11.
Running back 11.
You have him in the top 12. I mean, it is a juicy match. He has pretty strong. I have him at 17. So I definitely have him a locked in starter. I don't quite have him that high. Let me switch conversation to you for this real quick. Should he be a sell high? Because right now, what I'm looking at is expected fantasy points per game is 11.5, which in half point PPR leagues means he should be more along the lines of a high end RB3. He's actually putting up 14.5. So he's outperforming his expectation with his injury history, knowing RJ Harvey might get more involved as the season wears on. Is he a sell high to you right now?
These kinds of questions in a vacuum are hard because it's always roster dependent. Sure. I mean, right now he's performing very well for you. And so why would you want to get rid of that? I mean, you probably drafted him low enough because RJ Harvey was the darling in preseason. You probably drafted him low enough that you've got 2 running backs ahead of him that you were counting on. Now, unless those 2 running backs are Ashton Jeanty and Chase Brown, I mean, you're probably getting okay production from them too. And you could maybe afford to dangle J.K. Dobbins out there and see what he'll bring you back as. I would do it. Yeah. After this week, if he pops against it, which I expect, obviously, as having him ranked as a running back 1, if he pops this week, yeah, go ahead, dangle him out there, see what you can get for him because you drafted him so low. Almost anything you're getting either out of him or from him in a trade is icing on the cake compared to what you thought you were getting.
I agree. And you know what? I think consequently, RJ Harvey is a buy low. I do. I think RJ Harvey is a buy low. I'm sorry. I love Dobbins. I hope he does great, but I don't see him being able to stay healthy all season long. He's never been able to do it. My number 2 is Chase Brown. So just to bring this whole conversation full circle on back, I said I was going to get to it again later. I'm not going to rehash everything that we talked about, but there is another stat that I would like to say, and it kind of builds itself off of the reason why I talked about Ashton Jeanty wanting to sell him. I don't want to sell Chase Brown if you have him. Unlike Jeanty, Brown is 7th in expected fantasy points per game, which tells me the overall usage is there. He just needs some luckier breaks. He's involved in the passing game as much as we would want him to. He's involved in the rushing game as much as we would want him to. He's on the field a crazy amount. It's just not working out well right now. At some point, it's going to rebound. I mentioned their schedule the rest of the way. Between the usage and the matchups coming his way, things are going to break, I think, better in his direction. So for Chase Brown this week, however, I say all that positive about him, but this week I do have him lower than ECR. I got him at running back 26. ECR's got him at running back 18. I don't think we flip the script just yet, at least not to that level. And I think it's better to adjust your expectation for Chase Brown heading into this week in case you have another option to pivot to that maybe you need some more pop. So quickly, give me your number 3 guy.
My number 3 guy here is Justin Fields. I have Justin Fields ranked as QB 14 if he plays. Of course, this is contingent upon if he plays, but I would be 7 points over ECR if he does play here. Look, again, it's Justin Fields. We know that the guy can run the ball. We know that every time he's been a full-time starter on the real field, he's been a number 1 quarterback type fantasy starter. He had almost 30 points for your week 1 there against, Pittsburgh. He got hurt, unfortunately, against Buffalo, but before he got hurt in that game, he had run the ball 5 times for 49 yards again. So Justin Fields is a guy that, again, if he's playing, I like him as he always has that possibility for multiple rushing scores. He's throwing to the best, wide receiver that he's had in his career with Garrett Wilson, who's playing well this year. I like Justin Fields this week.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. If he plays, he will be my top 12. My rankings don't reflect it yet because I'm still waiting for that confirmation. Okay, my number 3 is Trey Tucker. Right now, ECR's got him at wide receiver 50. I got him at wide receiver 37. Before you sit there and tell me, well, damn, Trey Tucker is just a 1 week wonder. Blah, 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 blah. First of all, he's number 4 receiver on the year right now. I mean, for what that's worth. But more importantly, where I get into where I don't think this is necessarily a 1 week wonder situation is that his usage has been actually quite good. Yeah. He's had 92% of the routes run for the team. He's at 18.9% target share. He only has 4 less targets on the year than Jacoby Myers. He has the same amount as Brock Bowers. He's very much involved in this offense. And then he has the team high of 27% of the air yards on that team on top of it. So the big plays are there. He's as involved as Jacoby Myers. He's as involved as Brock Bowers. This is a team that's going to be in a lot of either negative or shootout scripts that we've already seen so far this season. Geno Smith's a good enough quarterback most weeks to get the ball out there to give his guys opportunities. And this match against the Bears is one of the higher over-unders on the week at a 47.5. And their secondary has been undermanned and will continue to be undermanned most of, if not all of the season with the injuries that they've faced right now. So Trey Tucker to me is he maybe boom or bust? Sure. But I think he's got some serious pop that you want to consider at the very least in your flex situation. I might even bring him up during the DFS cocktail hour.
All right. Hey, like we said, I got some new equipment this week. Hopefully we don't cut out on all of you here and leave Dan solo in it for the last portion of the show here. But time for the DFS cocktail. And the drink we'll be making this week, we're going to make the same drink I was going to make for you on air last week, the coin flip. Again, that recipe is online with my week 3 DFS cocktail article. Check out a new cocktail recipe this Friday when that article comes out there. But to get started, it's a weird slate this week. It's really weird. If you look at the over-under lines, if you look at the favorites lines, there's a lot of games that are like in the 47.5 to 49.5 point range in terms of their over-under. But there are some big favorites this week. You've got Buffalo as a 15.5 point favorite over New Orleans. You've got, according to DraftKings Sportsbook, you've got Detroit as a 10 point favorite at home. You've got the Chargers as a touchdown favorite on the road. Houston Texans are over a touchdown favorite against Tennessee at home. So when we're looking where we want to look at here, for our base spirit, for the thing that we're going to build the cocktail around and the DFS lineup around, I want to look for one of those higher point totals there, but with a small spread. I don't want the point spread to be, I don't want there to be a big favorite there because I want this to be a shootout. I want this to keep going, right? So if I take a look at it, I'm looking at the Colts at the Rams, pardon me. Colts at Raiders it's got the highest point total on the slate at 49.5 for an over-under there. The Rams are favored, but they're only favored by 3.5 here at home. And we're looking at a team in Indianapolis who I think has outperformed everyone's expectations, probably even their own. But that's going to be our base spirit, is going to be that game here. And from that game, we're going to play Dan's favorite guy, Daniel Jones, at 5,600 at quarterback. Now,
Indiana.
Yeah, right? Indiana Jones, your quarterback 4 on the season. He's been, he's only quarterback 14 in DraftKings salary this week. but he's a guy that's played at the fourth highest level of anybody in terms of fantasy in football here. Okay. He finished quarterback 4, 7, and 12 in DraftKings scoring the first 3 weeks. So he has been a starting position. He's been a starting player at his position every single week this year so far. And he's not just doing it by dinking and dunking down and running for short touchdowns. He's third in pass average and average yards per attempt. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns. He has a pass touchdown in every game. He's actually throwing the ball downfield a little bit more than we expected him to, which has been good news for Michael Pittman. But he's also facing a Rams defense that's only 17th in points allowed to the quarterback. They're kind of middle of the road there. But last week, Jalen Hurts was their quarterback 1, and Jalen Hurts was your quarterback 1 because he threw 3 scores. If you've watched the Eagles this year, if you drafted A.J. Brown this year, you know that they have not been throwing the ball a ton in Philadelphia, or at least not to A.J. Brown. If Jalen Hurts can throw 3 touchdowns against this team, that tells me that there's something to be had there in the air. The rest of Hurts's passing numbers were not outrageous. They were right in Danny Dimes' wheelhouse there. He only threw for like 228 yards, something like that. It wasn't an astronomical, number. Jones has been efficient. He's been really accurate with his throws, and he's been running the football. I like him at a $5,600 salary. That's barely over your average salary there when you look at your DraftKings breakdown. So I like Danny Jones there at $5,600. So then we're going to take his lead wide receiver. We're going to take Michael Pittman, who is a wide receiver 15 on the year in DraftKings scoring. He's caught 16 out of 19 targets this year from Daniel Jones for 193 yards, and he's caught 2 of those 3 scores that Jones has thrown. Pittman's only costing you $5,100 this week. That's below your average price in terms of, your DraftKings breakdown there. Michael Pittman is second to only Stephon Diggs, weirdly enough, among wide receivers who have 15 or more targets in percentage of those targets caught. So that Daniel Jones is locked onto him, and he's hitting him when he goes to him, and Pittman is catching everything that's thrown his way. Pittman's cheaper than Matthew Golden this week, for crying out loud. And Matthew Golden, if you've been watching and paying attention, has not been a great play for fantasy purposes. The Rams are 14th in points allowed to the opposing wide receivers this year. So that's borderline starter type numbers anyway. So we're going to take these 2 cheaper options in Daniel Jones and Michael Pittman. So then every cocktail needs that souring agent to play off against that base spirit and enhance it there. So this is where we won't keep with our base spirit. We're going to pay up for our souring agent here. We're going to go with Puka Nacua across the field from him at 7,900. Okay. We've talked about him earlier in the show. This dude leads the league in yards, leads the league in receptions. He leads the league in, for our purposes, fantasy points. And he's third in target share for wide receivers. He's blowing the lights out right now. He's playing out of his mind. And we all kind of hoped that he would, with Javonte Adams pulling that coverage away from him across the field. Puka doesn't even have a receiving touchdown yet. And he's the number 1 fantasy wide receiver. He's got a rushing touchdown. He's credited with 1 rushing touchdown. But he doesn't even have a touchdown reception yet. And he's your top overall fantasy wide receiver. Indianapolis, the Colts, they're tougher against wide receivers, but I mean, you're talking about a guy who has finished as in DraftKings scoring wide receiver 3, wide receiver 6, wide receiver 5. The Colts the last 2 weeks, they have given up touchdowns passing to Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, Elik Ayamaner last week. He caught one for the Tennessee Titans, who are not a great offense. So we're going to play against our base spirit and the Colts with Puka Nacua there. So our base spirit for the cocktail this week, we're looking at the coin flip. It's peanut butter whiskey. Now, you go around, find a peanut butter whiskey that you like. Okay. Dan, you were saying earlier, you said to me before that you hadn't found a peanut butter whiskey. It took a while for you to find one, right?
Yeah, it did.
But find a peanut butter whiskey that you like, okay? Because this week's cocktail is kind of a takeoff on the classic peanut butter and jelly sandwich, okay? And I'll tell you where the coin flip comes in a minute. But we're going to take 2 ounces of that peanut butter whiskey there. That's our base spirit. And then our souring agent is going to be, for Puka Nacua, a 1/2 ounce of fresh lemon juice there, okay? But then every cocktail that you make, if you're coming up with your own, it should also have a sweetener, a sweetening agent that kind of balances against the sour of the souring agent and that base spirit there. So we're going to go with J.K. Dobbins, who I talked about before, at 5,800. The running back 13 on the season. I just told you I have him as a top 12 play this week. 41 rushes, 222 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the year. And he's done that against Tennessee, Indianapolis, and the Chargers. 3 defenses that haven't been all that terrible against everybody else that they've played on the ground. Denver has the 2nd ranked offensive line, according to PFF. They're facing a Bengals defense that has no clue what they're doing out on the field right now. I said before, they're a 7.5 point favorite at home. Denver is. Cincinnati gives up the 2nd most points to opposing running backs. So as our sweetener this week, we are going to use J.K. Dobbins at 5,800 in one of our running back slots. And for our sweetener agent, we're just going to put in a 1/2 ounce here of simple syrup. Now, Dan, as I shake this up and get this going, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what we're doing here for this cocktail.
I can't wait. First of all, that sounds delicious. Number one, a little peanut butter jelly time. But as far as the DFS lineup goes, man, I'm kind of right there with you. Puka is in a lot of my lineups heading into this week, so we kind of saw common ground there. I don't know who else you're going to fill out your lineups with, but I'm loving me some Trey Tucker, who I mentioned earlier, but Parker Washington at $3,700. The guy who's been getting double-digit targets. Travis Hunter is playing more and more defensive back, which I knew was going to happen once they figured out what his better talents were suited for. So, yeah, Parker Washington, 3,700. He's the 2nd best, I think, most targeted receiver moving forward for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Going to match against San Francisco this week. So there's another little sweet play that maybe we can throw in there. But what you got now, Chase?
Well, I will tell you that I have been able to put together a lineup with the DFS cocktail here that had both James Cook and Amarian Hampton in it as well. Plus a $6,200 wide receiver. So this can get you, if my guys hit like I think they're going to, this could get you, a big score. But we're going to strain that into our glass here. Whoops, take the lid off, bro. There we go. So we're going to strain that in there. And here's where the coin flip comes in. We are going to top this off and mix in either a strawberry Moscato or a regular grape Moscato. And that's the jelly on your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, if you think about it that way, okay? It's kind of up to you. Now, if you want to be, if you want to leave it to the fates, you can literally flip the coin for it. For our purposes, I am going to just use a strawberry Moscato here that I have. We're going to put 1.5 ounces of that in there. So I will fill that. Let that go. And there is your coin flip. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich in a shot. It's wonderful. Sip on it. You can have multiple of these because none of the alcohols that we put in it, unless you find a peanut butter whiskey that's crazy proof, there's not a whole lot of alcohol in it. So you can sip on these all night long if you want to, but Slanjava, and good luck here on your DFS lineups.
Good luck with our plays there, and good luck with your weeks. Make sure you come back to Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. We'll be back tomorrow with Dr. Brian Scott for the injury inquiries. And while I will not have Chaz in the building for our bets for Saturday morning, he will be cutting up videos I'll be playing along with my player props and my bets that I like for the weekend too. So all that and more coming up. We'll see you guys then.